Welcome back, everyone, to Classic Books Deep Dive.
And today we're diving deep into Robert Greene's Mastery.
Now, you might know Robert Greene from his popular book, The 48 Laws of Power.
That's right.
But in Mastery, he kind of takes a different tack, and he dives into what he considers a higher form of power, which is mastery itself.
Exactly, the ultimate power.
Yeah, and we'll be exploring how individuals throughout history have achieved mastery in a variety of different fields.
Right, and Greene uses such a range of examples from, Charles Darwin to Benjamin Franklin to, more contemporary figures like Paul Graham and Freddie Roach.
Now, we've included a link to buy the book in the show description, so if you want to grab a copy and follow along, feel free.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so Greene starts off with this really powerful quote from Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Everyone holds his fortune in his own hands, like a sculptor, the raw material he will fashion into a figure. Yeah, and it really kind of emphasizes the idea that we all have the potential to shape our own destinies, that we're not just passive bystanders.
Right.
We have the ability to kind of mold ourselves, much like a sculptor molds clay.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Greene suggests that potential for mastery exists within all of us.
Yeah.
There's sort of like this inner drive pushing us toward a purpose,
Right.
our own life's task,
Right.
waiting to be discovered.
Waiting to be discovered, and he calls this mastery a higher form of power and intelligence.
Yes.
It's something that connects us to something bigger than ourselves
right.
and allows us to have a greater impact on the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, Greene even takes us back millions of years
Yes.
to kind of explore the evolution of mastery. And he mentions Richard Leakey, the paleoanthropologist,
Yeah.
who observed that our brains are essentially hunter-gatherer brains.
That's right.
It was through those evolutionary pressures that our capacity for focus, detachment, and social intelligence developed.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's amazing to think about those early humans, out on the African savanna.
Right.
They had to develop these incredibly sharp senses
Yeah.
and mental acuity just to survive.
To survive. Yeah.
They couldn't outrun predators
Yeah.
or rely on physical defenses. They didn't have, claws or fangs.
Exactly.
So their survival really depended on their ability to observe,
Yeah.
anticipate,
Mm-hmm.
and really kind of outsmart their environment.
Strategically.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then there's this fascinating development of mirror neurons,
Yeah.
which really allowed for imitation and the transmission of skills.
Mm-hmm. Powerful.
These neurons fired not only when primates performed an action, but also when they observed someone else performing that same action.
Right.
So it's like they could learn just by watching
Yeah.
and mimicking.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And that's the neurological basis for imitation,
Yeah.
which was so crucial for developing those sophisticated skills and social intelligence,
Right. It really is the foundation for social intelligence. Yeah.
which we'll explore later on.
Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense, right? If you want to hunt,
Right.
you need to be able to understand the intentions of others.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's delve into some of the fascinating individuals that Greene highlights to kind of illustrate this path to mastery.
Yeah.
And he begins with Charles Darwin, who wasn't considered an exceptional student, but had this just insatiable curiosity for collecting specimens and observing nature.
An inclination.
Yeah, he was fascinated by beetles, flowers, minerals, anything he could get his hands on.
Mm-hmm.
And his father actually scolded him, saying, "You care for nothing but shooting dogs and rat catching, and you will be a disgrace to yourself and all your family."
Wow.
So his father really wanted him to follow a more traditional path,
Yeah.
maybe become a doctor.
Right.
But Darwin found medical school in Edinburgh utterly boring. He couldn't stand the sight of blood and ended up dropping out.
So his father then tries to steer him toward a career in the church, thinking, well, he'll have plenty of free time to pursue his passion for collecting as a country parson.
As a country parson. Mm-hmm.
It's incredible how persistent this inclination was for Darwin.
Right.
Even despite facing all this pressure to conform.
Right, exactly.
The church position did require a degree, so he ends up at Cambridge University, and he still struggles with formal schooling. But he forms this really close bond with his botany instructor, Professor Henslow.
Ah.
And this is where things get interesting. So Henslow actually recommends Darwin for a position as an unpaid naturalist on the HMS Beagle,
Wow.
which was about to embark on this 5-year voyage around the world.
Around the world.
And this voyage turned out to be the perfect opportunity for Darwin to really explore his passion for collecting specimens.
Absolutely.
And he faced a lot of resistance to get on that voyage, too. His father was completely against it, thinking it would ruin his future prospects. He even called it a wild scheme.
Oh, wow.
But Darwin, with his uncle's support, was able to convince his father to give his reluctant consent. And on the eve of departure, Darwin wrote to the Beagle's captain, Robert Fitzroy, "My second life will then commence, and it shall be as a birthday for the rest of my life."
Wow.
Talk about finding your life's task.
Exactly.
That voyage really set him on the path to developing his groundbreaking theories on evolution.
Exactly. It was this incredible opportunity for deep observation and immersion that led to a creative breakthrough that would ultimately change the world.
Yeah.
It's not simply about talent or intelligence, but about finding that convergence between your inclination and a field that allows you to truly express your unique gifts.
Right.
Mastery is not some magical ability, but it is a process.
Right.
And often begins with a seemingly ordinary childhood fascination.
Yeah, and you see this, with so many other individuals throughout history. You look at Leonardo da Vinci's fascination with the metamorphosis of flowers.
Right.
Or Marie Curie's early interest in her father's laboratory instruments. These early interests really foreshadowed their future breakthroughs.
Right. Right. It's like those primal patterns
Yeah.
from our childhood, those early fascinations.
Yeah, and then there's the concept of resistance, which Greene sees as a signpost, pointing towards your true calling.
Point you in the right direction.
Yeah, so you think about Leonardo da Vinci's initial resistance to painting, or Buckminster Fuller's aversion to traditional building materials. These aversions actually led them to their most significant discoveries.
Interesting.
It's like the resistance is almost a signal that you're onto something unique and powerful.
Exactly.
Something that challenges, conventional thinking.
Absolutely.
So the discovery of your life's task is it's not a passive experience.
Right.
It requires looking back, to your childhood, acknowledging, embracing resistance, and venturing outside of your comfort zone.
Right.
And Greene actually provides a great example of this with Daniel Everett, a contemporary anthropologist linguist who grew up on the California-Mexico border.
Interesting.
And Everett was just captivated by Mexican culture from a young age. He was fascinated by the language, the food, the music, everything about it just seemed so different from his own world. And he just immersed himself in their language and culture. And this childhood fascination developed into a lifelong passion for languages and cultural diversity. And it ultimately led him to study the Piraham, an Amazonian tribe whose language challenged fundamental linguistic assumptions.
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah, so Everett's journey really demonstrates the power of following your inclination.
Right.
Even if it takes you to remote corners of the world. It's like that inner force guiding him was so strong that it led him to make groundbreaking contributions to our understanding of language and human nature.
Right, exactly.
Greene offers another compelling example with Yoki Matsuoka. She felt like an outsider growing up in Japan.
Okay.
And Matsuoka was incredibly gifted. She excelled in math, science, and even tennis. But she struggled to find a field that could really encompass all of her diverse interests.
Wow.
And she had this dream of building a robot that could play tennis with her.
Wow.
This fantasy that combined her love of sports, her analytical mind, and her desire for a worthy opponent.
That's great. I love that.
And what's really interesting is how that childhood dream actually guided her toward a career in robotics and neurobotics. So she actually excelled in tennis but realized it wasn't her true calling. She then studies electrical engineering at UC Berkeley. And one day, she shares her dream of building this tennis-playing robot with a professor. And to her surprise, the professor encouraged her, even invited her to join his robotics graduate lab.
Wow.
And her work there was so impressive that she ended up at MIT, working with Rodney Brooks, a pioneer in robotics and artificial intelligence.
Wow, that's incredible.
But her journey wasn't, without its challenges. She had to overcome this lack of a clear direction. She had debilitating tennis injuries, and then the pressure to conform to a more traditional career path. But her perseverance and that commitment to following her inclination
Yeah.
really led her to a field where she could combine all of her passions, robotics, neuroscience, and the human hand.
That's right.
She even coined the term neurobotics, which reflected her unique contribution to this emerging field.
Yeah.
And Matsuoka's story really underscores the importance of pursuing what excites you, even if it seems unconventional.
Yeah, right. It's like finding your niche.
Right.
That sweet spot where your work becomes an expression of your individuality.
Right.
And you feel that sense of purpose.
Yeah, and Greene argues that this sense of convergence, where your work aligns with your true self, is key to finding your life's task.
Right.
Is when your work stops feeling like work.
Right.
And it becomes an extension of who you are.
Right, exactly.
Freddie Roach, the legendary boxing trainer,
Oh, yeah.
is another great example of this.
Okay.
So Roach's boxing career was cut short by pugilistic Parkinson's disease, forcing him to retire at the young age of 27.
Wow.
And he felt really lost and directionless, unsure of what to do with his life. He took on these odd jobs, drank heavily, even worked as a telemarketer. But he was longing for those days when he felt alive in the ring.
Right.
But then one day, he finds himself back at his old boxing gym, watching his friend Virgil Hill spar with a boxer, training for a title fight.
Okay.
And there's no one in Hill's corner. So Roach steps in to help,
Okay.
offering water, advice. He's just drawn back into this world of boxing, but from a different perspective. And it was like a switch flipped in his mind.
Yeah.
He realized he couldn't escape his passion for boxing, but he could express it differently as a trainer.
Right.
And his deep understanding of boxing techniques, combined with this ability to really connect with the fighters, made him an exceptional trainer.
Right.
He even changed the way trainers use mitts,
Okay.
developing a more interactive approach that really focused on a fighter's individual strengths and weaknesses.
Interesting.
So instead of just having the boxer hit the mitts, Roach actually used them to simulate an opponent's movements, making training more realistic
Oh, wow.
and engaging. It's remarkable how he channeled this frustration
Right.
with this shortened boxing career into this new path that brought him even greater success.
Absolutely. Roach's story really highlights another crucial phase in that mastery process. The apprenticeship.
The apprenticeship. And Greene describes the ideal apprenticeship as this period of intense learning and skill acquisition.
Right.
It's a transformative experience. And he uses the example of Benjamin Franklin's unconventional apprenticeship at a printing shop.
Interesting.
So Franklin's father wanted him to go into the family candle-making business. But Benjamin aspired to be a writer. And since his father wouldn't allow him to apprentice with a writer, he ends up in a printing shop, which seemed, less desirable at the time.
Right.
But this seemingly mundane job actually turned out to be the perfect training ground for him. He learned the intricacies of language, the power of the printed word, and the art of persuasion.
Wow.
He even secretly wrote articles and submitted them to his brother's newspaper, using a pseudonym to avoid being caught. So Franklin really utilized his apprenticeship not only to learn the technical skills of printing, but to develop his writing style, sharpen his social intelligence, and launch his writing career.
Right. Exactly.
So Greene emphasizes that this apprenticeship phase is about more than just learning a trade.
It's about personal transformation and growth.
And Greene outlines 3 steps in this apprenticeship process.
Okay.
Deep observation,
Okay.
skills acquisition, and experimentation.
Okay. So let's break those down. So deep observation, or what Greene calls the passive mode, involves silencing your own opinions and simply absorbing the rules and dynamics of your environment.
Right.
It's about becoming a sponge, soaking up knowledge, observing how things work.
Right, exactly.
In your chosen field. So, like Darwin, meticulously documenting his observations of the natural world during his voyage on the Beagle.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or, Albert Einstein's seemingly tedious job at the patent office.
Right.
Which allowed him to sharpen his critical thinking skills and deepen his understanding of how inventions worked.
That's right.
Then there's skills acquisition,
Right.
the practice mode.
Yeah.
And this is where we gain tacit knowledge through repetition and hands-on experience. Yes, that's right.
So it's about ingraining knowledge into our minds and bodies, building muscle memory, and honing our craft,
Right.
like the, 10,000 hours concept popularized by Malcolm Gladwell,
Mm-hmm.
which suggests that it takes that much deliberate practice
Yeah.
to achieve mastery
Right.
in any field.
Right. Greene explains that apprenticeship system of the Middle Ages, with its emphasis on repetition and practical experience, understood this principle long before modern science.
Okay. Yeah.
And finally, there's experimentation, the active mode. And this is where we start to assert ourselves,
Right.
test new ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and move beyond simply imitating our mentors.
Exactly.
So like Leonardo da Vinci experimenting with new painting techniques, or Benjamin Franklin secretly writing those articles
Right.
and testing them out
Exactly.
on his brother. And this experimentation phase is crucial
Yes.
for breaking free from the mentor's shadow,
Right.
and forging your own path.
Exactly. Greene also delves into the importance of mentorship, using the example of Michael Faraday, who went from a bookbinder's apprentice to a pioneering scientist,
Wow, incredible.
thanks to the guidance of Humphrey Davy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating how Faraday really transformed himself
Mm-hmm.
through observation, meticulous note-taking, and experimentation.
Mm.
So he attended Davy's lectures,
Mm-hmm.
absorbed everything he could, and then meticulously transcribed his notes into this beautifully organized booklet,
Wow.
which he presented to Davy as a gift.
Mm.
And then when Davy was temporarily blinded by a laboratory explosion,
Ooh.
Faraday stepped in as his assistant, impressing him with his knowledge and diligence.
Ah.
So this unfortunate incident actually opened the door for Faraday to enter the world of scientific research.
Wow. Interesting.
And this brings us to this fascinating concept of the alchemy of knowledge. So, how knowledge is passed from one person to another and how it can be used to create something entirely new. So Faraday, through observing and analyzing Davy's work, internalized his mentor's knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and then pushed beyond it
Right.
to make these groundbreaking discoveries in electromagnetism.
That's right.
It's like he absorbed the essence of Davy's thinking
Mm-hmm.
and then added his own unique perspective and insights.
Right. Exactly.
And this alchemy of knowledge is this powerful catalyst
Yeah.
for learning and growth. But it also highlights the importance of choosing the right mentor.
Mm. That's so important.
So Greene actually cautions against choosing a mentor who's too similar to you
Mm-hmm.
or who might stifle your creativity.
Right.
He uses the example of Carl Jung's break from Sigmund Freud
Uh-huh.
to illustrate this point. So Jung was initially drawn to Freud's ideas,
Mm-hmm.
seeing him as this father figure.
Mm.
But as time went on, he realized that Freud's emphasis on sexuality
Right.
as the root of all neuroses just didn't align with his own observations and experiences.
Mm.
And this eventually led to a painful break, with Jung forging his own path and developing his own unique theories on the human psyche.
Exactly.
So that mentor-protege relationship, while potentially powerful,
Mm-hmm.
can also be complex.
Right.
It's crucial to find a mentor who aligns with your inclinations
Mm-hmm.
and challenges you without stifling your individuality.
Right.
And sometimes, as in the case of the brilliant pianist Glenn Gould,
Okay.
the influence of a demanding teacher can actually hinder the development of your unique voice.
Mm-hmm.
So Gould had this incredible ear for music. He could replicate another pianist's playing
Wow.
after hearing it just once. And his teacher, Alberto Guerrero, instilled in him this particular way of playing and interpreting music.
Mm.
And even though Gould had, absorbed all of Guerrero's teachings, it ultimately prevented him from finding his own voice.
Interesting.
And it was only after years of grappling with this dilemma that Gould realized he had to break free from Guerrero's shadow and forge his own path. And he began to subtly alter Guerrero's musical ideas, making them his own.
Mm.
And this allowed him to develop his unique style and become one of the most original pianists of his time.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
So Gould's story really underscores that delicate balance
Mm-hmm.
in the mentor-protege relationship, this need to absorb knowledge
Right.
while also finding your own voice.
Yeah.
And speaking of finding your own voice, Greene emphasizes this critical role of social intelligence in achieving mastery.
Mm-hmm.
He states that Often the greatest obstacle to our pursuit of mastery comes from the emotional drain we experience in dealing with the resistance and manipulations of the people around us.
Mm-hmm.
And he calls this the naive perspective,
Uh-huh.
which is our tendency to project our own feelings and desires onto others.
Right, right.
And this often leads to misunderstandings and conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses Benjamin Franklin's life as a prime example
Right.
of how to overcome this naive perspective. So, Franklin was a master of understanding human nature. He was skilled at observing nonverbal cues
Mm-hmm.
and strategically using emotions to achieve his goals. He understood that success in the world required more than just talent
Mm-hmm.
and intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
It also required the ability to navigate the social landscape with finesse.
Right, social intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this actually led him to develop his own set of rules for social interaction, which he called the 13 Virtues.
Interesting.
And he even meticulously tracked his progress in mastering these virtues, using a chart to mark his daily performance.
Wow.
So this rigorous self-assessment really helped him to overcome his natural inclinations and develop a more socially intelligent persona.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah, and Greene highlights how Franklin's social intelligence really played a key role in his rise to power.
Right.
He was able to charm even his political adversaries, transforming antagonism into warmth and using his social skills to build alliances and advance his agenda.
That's right.
So Franklin's story really is a testament to the power of social intelligence.
Mm.
And it's not about being manipulative or cunning.
Right.
It's about understanding human nature
Mm-hmm.
and using that knowledge to navigate those complexities
Yeah.
of the world. Now, Greene then introduces what he calls the 7 deadly realities.
Okay.
These are patterns of human behavior that can
Right.
really hinder our social intelligence
Mm-hmm.
and impede our path to mastery.
Right.
And these realities include envy, conformism, rigidity, self-obsessiveness, laziness, flightiness, and passive aggression.
Mm.
So they act like traps
Right.
that we can fall into
Yeah.
if we're not careful. And he cautions, for instance, against the dangers of envy
Mm-hmm.
and how it can poison our relationships and distract us from our goals.
Right.
So envy is a powerful emotion,
Mm-hmm.
and it can tempt us to sabotage others
Yeah.
or become overly critical of their achievements.
Yeah.
And Greene suggests that a more constructive approach is to understand the root of our envy and use it as motivation to improve ourselves.
I like that.
He also advises against conformism, warning that it can stifle our creativity and adaptability in a world that's constantly changing. So conformity can be a strong force, pushing us to adopt the opinions and behaviors of the group,
Right.
even when they conflict with our own inclinations.
Right.
To achieve mastery, Greene argues, we must learn to resist this pressure to conform
Mm-hmm.
and cultivate our own unique voice.
Yeah.
Then there's rigidity,
Right.
which can make us inflexible and unable to adapt to new information or changing circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So rigidity is detrimental to learning and growth.
Right.
And to achieve mastery, we need to be open to new ideas, willing to adjust our thinking, and always seeking ways to improve.
Absolutely.
Greene also cautions against self-obsessiveness and how it can blind us to the needs of others and create unnecessary drama. So self-obsessiveness can trap us in this cycle of negativity
Right.
and self-doubt.
Yeah.
To break free, we need to shift our focus outward,
Mm-hmm.
become more interested in the world around us,
Right.
and less preoccupied with ourselves.
Exactly.
And this outward focus is crucial
Mm-hmm.
for developing what Greene calls the dimensional mind,
Uh-huh. Interesting.
which he describes as this ability to think beyond linear conventional ways and
Yeah.
achieve creative breakthroughs.
Right.
So the dimensional mind operates in this more fluid
Mm.
and expansive way, making connections between seemingly unrelated fields
Yeah.
and ideas.
Exactly. Like Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and his ability to synthesize multiple musical styles and genres into his own unique compositions.
Right.
Right. Or Jean-Francois Champollion's groundbreaking work
Mm-hmm.
in deciphering the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Yeah.
Right. So these are great examples of dimensional minds at work.
Yeah. And Greene emphasizes that developing the dimensional mind requires cultivating 2 key components, what he calls negative capability,
Okay.
and then the ability to alter your perspective.
Okay.
So negative capability, a term coined by the poet John Keats, is the ability to embrace uncertainty and suspend judgment.
Hmm.
So to remain open to new possibilities and avoid rushing to conclusions.
Right.
So it's about resisting the urge to prematurely label or categorize things,
Right.
allowing our minds to explore freely without constraints.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And it's also about consciously shifting our perspective,
Right.
looking at problems from multiple angles
Mm-hmm.
and challenging our own assumptions.
Exactly.
And Greene calls this looking at the what instead of the how.
Interesting.
And he explains that we often get bogged down in linear thinking, focusing on the process or the mechanics of something instead of those underlying principles of the bigger picture. And by shifting our perspective and asking different questions, we can unlock these new solutions and creative breakthroughs.
Right.
And he offers this fascinating example of this with Santiago Calatrava, the renowned architect and engineer.
Okay.
So Calatrava was just captivated by movement and dynamism in his buildings. But he initially lacked this deep understanding of the structural principles that would allow him to achieve those effects.
Right.
So he knew he had to go beyond that surface aesthetics of a building and delve into the mechanics of how structures are actually built.
Right.
So he goes back to school and earns a degree in civil engineering at the Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich.
Wow.
So this seemingly unconventional step back actually gave him the knowledge, speaker, and he eventually combined his artistic vision with this engineering knowledge to create buildings that appear to defy gravity, like the Milwaukee Art Museum,
Right.
with its enormous glass and steel wings that open and close like a giant seagull.
That's incredible.
So Calatrava's story really illustrates the power of altering your perspective. By venturing outside his comfort zone and embracing this new field, he was able to create something truly original.
Right. And Greene then explores various techniques for stimulating that dimensional mind, like tension and insight,
Okay.
serendipity, and dimensional thinking.
Okay. So let's break those down a bit. So tension and insight.
Right.
That's about creating a sense of pressure and then allowing for that creative breakthrough.
Yeah.
So think about Mozart staying up all night before the premiere of Don Giovanni, with his friends keeping him awake by singing to him. And in that heightened state of tension, he composes the overture in just a few hours.
Wow.
Or Évariste Galois, a brilliant mathematician,
Yeah.
experiencing this sudden burst of genius while facing an impending duel. It's as if that pressure forces the mind to operate at a higher level,
Right.
leading to those unexpected insights.
Absolutely.
And Greene points out that Thomas Edison, he even manufactured deadlines for himself and his team,
Right.
believing that the tension of a looming deadline
Right.
would spark greater creativity.
Yeah, exactly.
Then there's serendipity, the art of being open to chance encounters and unexpected discoveries. So like Louis Pasteur's groundbreaking discovery of inoculation, which occurred when he accidentally injected these old chicken cholera cultures into chickens and found that they survived.
Wow.
So what's fascinating is how Pasteur's deep knowledge of his field,
Right.
combined with that open mind, really enabled him to recognize the significance of this seemingly random event.
Exactly.
He didn't just dismiss it as a fluke. He investigated it further, and that ultimately led to a revolutionary breakthrough
Right.
in medicine.
Yeah.
So Greene really emphasizes that serendipity is not just about luck.
Right.
It's about being prepared to see the meaning
Yeah.
in what might appear meaningless.
That's right. It's like that old saying, chance favors the prepared mind.
Right, exactly. And then there's dimensional thinking,
Right.
which involves combining the how and the what to connect seemingly unrelated fields and ideas. It's about finding those hidden connections,
Yeah.
those underlying principles
Right.
that link these seemingly different phenomena,
Exactly.
like Calatrava,
Right.
combining his love of movement with his engineering knowledge to create those dynamic buildings,
Right.
or Champollion
Yeah.
using his knowledge of languages and his fascination with ancient Egypt
Right.
to crack the code of hieroglyphics.
Exactly.
So the dimensional mind, it's not just about being creative.
Right.
It's also about being a synthesizer, someone who can see those connections
Yeah.
that others miss and combine ideas
Right.
in these new and original ways.
Right. And Greene argues that the dimensional mind is not some innate gift, but it's a way of thinking that we can all cultivate through practice.
Right.
And by consciously challenging the limitations of our conventional thinking.
Right.
So it's about breaking free from those mental ruts,
Right.
those habitual patterns of thought that limit our creativity.
Yeah, and he even suggests using these external tools to kind of shake things up. For example, the writer Anthony Burgess.
Okay.
He used random words from a reference book to spark new ideas
Wow.
for his novels.
That's interesting.
So it's like forcing the mind to make connections it wouldn't normally make,
Yeah.
leading to those aha moments.
Right. Exactly. And the surrealist artist Max Ernst used a similar technique, creating rubbings
Okay.
from a wood floor and using those random patterns to inspire his hallucinatory drawings.
It's incredible how just, bringing in something random can spark these new ideas.
Absolutely. It really is about opening ourselves up to the unexpected,
Yeah.
even the seemingly irrational,
Right.
and allowing those chance encounters to ignite our creativity.
Right.
And this openness is essential for achieving mastery, for constantly pushing those boundaries of our fields and ourselves.
Right. And Greene argues that mastery, it's not a destination.
Right.
It's an ongoing process of learning, adaptation,
Right.
and creative exploration.
Right. It's about developing that deep understanding of the underlying principles of our field,
Right.
honing our skills through deliberate practice, and then pushing beyond what is known to create something new and original.
Yeah.
Right. And he uses the example of Cesar Rodriguez,
Okay.
a professional dancer who trained himself to really push past his natural inclinations and embrace that rigorous, often painful process of mastering his craft.
Wow.
Rodriguez believed in transforming yourself through practice, pushing himself to achieve the fingertip feel, that intuitive connection between the mind and the body. He even forced himself to practice in these challenging environments,
Okay.
like a ship's narrow corridor,
Wow.
to refine his skills and develop this greater sense of control.
So Rodriguez's story really emphasizes the transformative power of that apprenticeship phase.
Right.
It's this period of intense self-discovery where we confront our limitations, we push past our fears, and emerge as more skilled
Right.
and resilient individuals.
Exactly.
And then there's Leonardo da Vinci,
Right.
the ultimate Renaissance man,
Right.
who really embodied the ideal of the universal man, someone who could synthesize all these forms of knowledge.
Yeah.
And Da Vinci wasn't content with mastering just one field. I mean, he's a painter, a sculptor, an engineer, an inventor, a scientist, and more.
Right.
And he saw the world as this interconnected web, believing that knowledge in one area could inform and enrich his understanding of others.
Exactly.
And he meticulously documented his observations in his notebooks, just filling with sketches, diagrams, and insights into everything, from human anatomy to the flight of birds.
That's right. And his insatiable curiosity and that drive to connect those seemingly disparate fields allowed him to achieve just an unparalleled level of mastery, making him one of the most influential figures in history.
Yeah. So Da Vinci's story reminds us that mastery, it's not about achieving perfection.
Right.
It's about embracing that process of lifelong learning.
Right. And cultivating that beginner's mind, always seeking out new challenges and pushing yourself to really expand the boundaries of what's possible.
Yeah. And this leads us to the concept of the global perspective. So the ability to see the world from multiple viewpoints and understand that interconnectedness of things. So this is about moving beyond our own narrow perspectives and embracing this more holistic and nuanced understanding of the world.
Exactly.
And Greene uses the example of Freddie Roach's ability to adapt his training methods to individual fighters, maximizing their potential by recognizing those unique strengths and weaknesses.
Well,
so Roach's global perspective allowed him to move beyond that one-size-fits-all approach and tailor his training to each fighter's specific needs. It's like he could see their potential, not just their current skill level, and then guide them toward a path that allowed them to achieve mastery in their own unique way.
Exactly.
So this ability to see the bigger picture, connect the dots, and guide others toward their full potential
Right.
really is a hallmark
Yeah, that's right.
of mastery.
Yeah.
And finally, Greene introduces the inside-out perspective. So the ability to kind of step outside of our own ego and see the world through the eyes of others.
Right.
So this involves developing empathy, understanding the motivations of others,
Right.
and recognizing how our actions affect them.
That's right.
So it's about moving beyond self-interest and cultivating this more generous and compassionate view of the world.
Exactly.
And Greene uses the example of Daniel Everett's work with the Pirahan,
Right.
that Amazonian tribe whose language and culture really challenged his own assumptions about the world. So Everett had to completely immerse himself
Yeah.
in their world, learning their language, living among them, participating in their daily lives.
Yeah.
And this forced him to shed his preconceptions and see the world
Right.
from their perspective.
That's right.
And in doing so, he discovered this new way of understanding language and human nature.
Right. And Everett's story really demonstrates that transformative power of the inside-out perspective.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we're not the center of the universe,
Mm-hmm.
right? And our own limited perspectives
Yeah.
can often blind us
Yeah.
to the truth.
So mastery is not just about accumulating knowledge and skills.
Right.
It's about developing this deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
Right, exactly.
It's about cultivating a more expansive
Yeah.
and compassionate view of life, one that allows us to connect with others, contribute to society,
Right.
and achieve our full potential.
Exactly.
And this, in essence, is the ultimate form of power.
Yes.
It's not about dominance or control,
Right.
but about influence, creativity, and the ability to shape the world
Yeah.
around us.
Yeah, that's right.
And that is the true legacy of mastery. So we've covered a lot in our deep dive into Robert Greene's mastery.
We have. It's been quite a journey.
We really have. I mean, we explore the evolutionary roots of mastery, the importance of finding your life's task, navigating the apprenticeship phase, and even delved into the complexities of the creative process. It's been fascinating. And I have to say, I'm feeling pretty inspired right now. How about you?
I am too. I think Greene has this really amazing way of presenting these complex ideas in a way that's both engaging and thought-provoking.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that really struck me is how Greene emphasizes that mastery isn't about achieving some unattainable level of perfection.
Right. It's not about being perfect. It's about the process.
Right.
The continuous journey of learning and growth and refinement.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, experimenting, making mistakes,
Right.
and learning from those experiences,
Exactly.
and finding that sweet spot, where your work aligns with your passions,
Right.
and your natural talents, that sense of flow and purpose that comes when you're fully engaged in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for our listeners? How can they apply these insights from mastery to their own lives?
Well, I think the first step is to really just take some time for self-reflection. Think about what truly excites you.
Right.
What activities make you lose track of time? What were you passionate about as a child? Those early interests.
Yeah.
And inclinations can often provide really valuable clues to your life's task, even if they seem unrelated
Right.
to your current path.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't be afraid to explore different avenues, to experiment and try new things. You never know where those explorations might lead you.
Right, exactly.
And once you've identified your inclination, look for opportunities to immerse yourself in that field. Seek out mentors, connect with people who are already doing what you aspire to do, and learn everything you can.
Right, yeah. And remember, mastery is not a solo endeavor.
Right.
Right? It's about building relationships, collaborating with others, and being open to feedback and guidance.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't let fear of failure hold you back.
Right.
Embrace challenges as opportunities for growth and learning.
Yeah.
And remember that even the Even the most accomplished masters
Mm-hmm.
have faced setbacks
Right.
and obstacles along the way.
That's right. As Greene reminds us, mastery is not a destination.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lifelong journey.
It is.
It's about constantly striving for excellence, pushing your boundaries, and never losing sight of your passion and your purpose.
Absolutely. So we encourage you to take what you've learned from mastery and apply it to your own life.
Mm-hmm.
Discover your life's task, embrace that process of learning and growth, and strive for mastery in all that you do.
Absolutely. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on mastery. What resonated with you? What insights will you be applying to your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below or connect with us on social media.
And that's it for this week's deep dive into Robert Greene's mastery. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening, everyone.